Season 6 of The Connors almost coming to a close, but we've got a couple episodes to go, including this one, episode number 12. Let's talk about flying, applying, and Rassling Gators. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my Connors review for episode 12 of season 6. Just one more after this one. Flying, applying, and Rassling Gators. And before we launch into the specifics of this episode, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. If you are new around here, well, I've been doing the Connors reviews every single week that there is a new Connors episode since the Roseanne season 10 days, the reboot. And you can check out all of the episodes in playlists. Just click playlists in the tab there on my homepage, and you can see all of the Connors reviews there. But I do a lot of other things, not just the Connors, tons of movie and TV stuff on the channel here for you to check out. And they're all in playlists as well, so you can check those out to streamline your experience a little more. But please consider subscribing, click that like button, and comment below with your thoughts on this episode. I love discussing the Connors episodes with you guys, so that's such a fun part of doing these videos. So, all right, let's get into this week's episode, Flying, Applying, and Rassling Gators. And actually, you know what, before we even talk the specifics about this one, there was news this week about ABC's fall schedule and about the Connors season 7. So we talked a little bit last week about how we're going to get a 6-episode season for season 7, and that will be it. That will sort of put a bookend on the series, theoretically. However, I thought this was interesting. So ABC, all the networks really announced their fall schedules this week at their upfront presentations. And ABC, when they revealed their fall schedule, well, the Connors was not on it. In fact, there's only one comedy on the entire fall schedule. That's Abbott Elementary. It will air at 9:30 after an hour and a half long episode of The Bachelorette, or the Golden Bachelorette. I don't watch any of those shows, but I think that's what it is, the Golden Bachelorette. But anyway, so the Connors is going to be a mid-season show, so probably in January or something of 2025. But here's, and this is maybe wishful thinking on my part, but I was wondering if maybe they're doing that so that they can gauge the audience response to when the Connors hits syndication this fall. Because this fall, it's going to be on your local stations playing Monday through Friday, 5 nights a week. And I know the CW has been doing that a little bit. I think it's 1 night a week they play like 2 episodes or something. And of course, it just hit Netflix recently as well. But I don't know. I was wondering if maybe they were trying to gauge audience response, maybe new eyeballs getting onto the show in the fall when it hits syndication, and maybe they'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll give you more episodes to finish out the final season. I don't know. That could be wishful thinking on my part, but I thought it was interesting that, they're only going to do 6 episodes, and it's not a fall show. I thought that was very odd scheduling. So we'll see. I could be just dreaming or putting it out there into the world or what have you. But all right, so let's talk about this week's episode, Flying, Applying, and Rassling Gators. This was directed by Jody Margolin Hahn. She's directed so many. I mean, her and Robbie Countryman have directed almost every episode this season. There's every so often there's one person in a random episode, but almost all of this season's episodes have been directed by either Robbie Countryman or Jody Margolin Hahn. So, people with familiar with how this family works and how they want to shoot them. And then for the story and the teleplay, you've got the Rasmussen family. Bruce Rasmussen gave us the story here, and he's been a part of this family and this universe since the 90s. I believe he was a big part of the original Roseanne sort of behind-the-scenes stuff. And I think, if I'm remembering this right, you can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, I think he sort of co-created this iteration of the show with Sarah Gilbert. So I don't know. But anyway, Hunter Rasmussen is doing the teleplay here, and I believe that is his son. We've seen his name pop up once before this season, but certainly a Rasmussen family affair with this episode. Okay, so this is following the plot from last week. Now, Ben actually does not appear in this episode, but this has to do with the money from last week's episode that Ben gave Dan when the hardware store burned down. Instead of trying to rebuild, he decided to just take the insurance money, and he's going to go and do this hardware magazine thing. But he gave Dan 10% of which is his share in the company, and it turned out to be a lot of money, enough to pay off the house. So the first scene of this episode, we have them at the bank, and they're finally going to pay off the house. Joel Murray, who is, I guess he's the youngest brother of Bill Murray and Brian Doyle Murray, but he's been in a ton of shows over the years. I think maybe he was kind of a mainstay on the Drew Carey show in the 90s, but in any event, you've probably seen him in something. And he plays the banker, and they're sort of trying to taunt him, like, oh, you hate it when we pay our mortgage, and you've been after us, for so long, and we gotcha on the mortgage. And he's just like, no, I'm happy for you guys. I love when people come in and pay their mortgages, and the Connor family, of course, not happy with that. They wanted some blood, sweat, and tears out of this dude. But the whole family came down, family affair. The main core, Louise was not there either, but actually, though, Sean Astin's character was there, Tyler, so he came down with Becky. But other than that, it was Jackie and Darlene and Dan and Mark and Harris. So and that's everybody from the core cast that's in the episode. Louise was not in this episode either, and hopefully she'll be in the finale. Of course, we all love Louise. And she had a plot, either what was that, last week or the week before, about the school board stuff. I think that was. Well, sort of both, I guess, because I think they got the results in last week. But in any event, hopefully we'll see her in the finale. And Ben, too. Love seeing Ben. But anyway, they ended up paying too much money left on the mortgage, and that can be confusing. I pay a mortgage as well, and between the interest and then the escrow and all of that. So anyway, they ended up paying an extra $1,800 some dollars. And so Dan and Jackie decide to take that money and take a trip to New Orleans. And that portion is, of course, the flying that we get from the title. So we'll keep it going with that, I guess. So Dan, when they get to the plane, and in their seats, he's just like, I have this bad feeling. The Connors, always when something good happens, something bad is right behind that, right around the corner. And Jackie sort of dismisses that, but look, we've seen this family have the ups and downs for decades now, and I can't say that he's wrong. The writers certainly write those types of stories for them. So, they decide, okay, well, let's just sit back and relax. But all of a sudden, we have this jerk behind them, in the row behind them, sort of chastising this younger woman for filling the overhead bin too much. And so he takes her coat out and takes her purse out and throws it on the floor. And Jackie begs Dan not to get involved, and he's like, nah, I can't. I can't not be involved in this. I can't let this slide. This jerk's going to get what's coming to him. So he does de-escalate the situation without violence and without really much fanfare, luckily. So they fear that maybe they're going to get kicked off the plane or something. But it turns out that the crew was all really happy that he was able to de-escalate it without any violence or anything like that. So everybody's allowed to stay on the plane and everybody's happy. However, the guy, of course, not happy, and so he starts egging Dan on and really, really trying to get his goat, and calls him Jackie's not seeing eye dog, it was special needs dog or whatever. And he's really, really trying to get Dan's goat. So when he gets up to go to the bathroom, Dan's like, you know what? I'm sorry, we're going to get kicked off this flight, before it takes off, because I'm going to punch this guy in the face. And we don't see that, of course, but in the very next scene, we have the cops coming to Darlene's house, and that's part of the other storyline. They did a little bait and switch there that was kind of cute. We thought, this is the cop bringing Dan around or whatever, but no, it's for Mark. So we'll talk about that storyline in a second, but that was sort of the dovetailing of the two. But in any event, they end up still taking the trip, but taking the bus down. And so Dan stops by the house to get a 6-pack of beer to enjoy on the ride down. And so the tag scene is them bringing back little trinkets for everybody from the trip. So that's that portion of the episode. And then we have the applying part of the episode. And so this has to do with the laptop that Darlene gave to Becky a few weeks ago. I'm not positive if we saw that on the show or not. I know Darlene had gotten a laptop for Mark with Bev's credit card earlier in the season, but in any event, Becky was looking through this old computer and found an old application that Mark filled out for the University of Chicago, and she decided to send it in on his behalf. He didn't know, Darlene didn't know, and all of a sudden Darlene was not having it. She was real pissed about it, actually, because she's like, look, if he gets in, what are we going to do? We can't afford it. If he doesn't get in, he'll be crushed, this and that. And Becky's like, oh, well, what am I going to do with this letter of acceptance that came in the email earlier today? So Darlene decides to tell Mark about it. But basically, they agree that they can't afford to send him there. And this was an interesting plot point for me because, well, you know what? Let me finish talking about it, I guess, first, and then I'll get to my thoughts on it. But in any event, Mark is shattered by this. He wishes he never even knew. They talk about how he's going to sad you. That's what the acronym is for the school he's currently attending, and so that's sort of a running joke through this episode. But he ends up getting drunk and going on the mini golf course and on one of those power scooters or whatever, and tries to Evel Knievel over the moat and falls in, and that is why the cop shows up at the door. But luckily not going to press charges. He's like, look, no damage was really done. Honestly, I certainly, I think he stole the cart, right? That's something, and obviously, trespassing on the mini, but whatever, that doesn't need to be a part of the show. But I just thought it was very convenient that the cop was like, nah, he's good, because he is over 18 now, but he's still under 21. He's under the legal drinking age. That can certainly get dicey. So, in any event, he decided to not prosecute. But Darlene, obviously has some things to say about it, and Mark ends up kind of flipping out at both her and Becky, because basically, he's sad and angry that he can't go to the school. He's pissed at Becky for even sending it in without him knowing, and he's pissed at Darlene for telling him, and all of this. And so there's a really, really great resolution to that. The next morning, he's, kind of nursing a hangover. She brings him in Pedialyte, Darlene does, and they have a little heart-to-heart about everything. And, he's like, this sucks. I have the potential for this school. I obviously got in, but we can't afford to go, and I get that, but I'm sorry about all the mean things I said last night, and she said, look, you know what, maybe you can go, if you start working or whatever. And he says, would you be okay basically with me taking a year or more off of school and working? And, you've sacrificed all of this stuff for me, and took this job as a lunch lady, which you hate, so I could have, this education. And she's like, well, yeah, but I did it so you would be happy, and you're obviously not happy. So, I'm okay with it. And I believe her. I believe when she says that. I mean, that's everything that, a good parent wants for their kid is for them to be happy, regardless of their own sacrifices. And, my parents certainly did that, which I appreciate. So, Darlene, she's certainly had her moments, her bad moments as a parent. This, I think, was one of the better ones. I think she really was showing, her true love here for Mark. So I think this episode was a pretty solid one, honestly. There's not really a whole lot to say about the Dan and Jackie stuff. There was definitely some humor there. The opening scene where they're at the bank, kind of yelling at the banker and saying, "Ha ha, I gotcha." That's fine. But it does remind me a little bit. I mean, anytime anybody in this family gets just just an ounce of something good or some kind of power or whatever, it becomes this, quest to just kind of destroy everybody in their wake. And that goes back to the original Roseanne, and there's been lots of examples of that over the years. So I get it. But I kind of felt bad for the banker. He was just trying to be nice. And even one of the other people in the office, it was her birthday and she brought them in a cake and was like, oh, this was for my birthday, but I think you guys should have it since you've, finally paid off your mortgage, something you've been wanting to do for a long, long time. So like everybody was overly nice and they were being overly jerky. I mean, it made for some humor, I suppose, but, I want to root for this family that's finally, having something good happen. But of course, look, Dan, the hero of the day again, taking on that guy on the plane. He was a real jerk off. And, of course, Dan was going to do what Dan's going to do. He's always standing up for everybody. He's standing up for the little guy, in this case, the young woman. So loved all of that. And I loved, look, anytime Jackie and Dan are together, lately, especially, I've just really, really been enjoying it. And I think part of that is, that John Goodman and Laurie Metcalf have, been friends for 30 plus years, 35 years or more doing this show. And I can tell that they genuinely just have a great time doing these scenes together, just goofing around and all that kind of stuff. So that part was great. I really, look, I understand you got to kick the guy off of the flight that punches somebody, but seeing as how he was kind of in the right, the guy was a jerk. It seemed like they weren't gonna, press charges or whatever. The airline was just gonna let them go and say, hey, you can't be on this flight, but have a good day. We're not going to do anything else because we know this guy sucks, that kind of thing. So that was cool. I like that. And I like that they still got to take their little trip. I thought that was nice. Although it is weird, of course, we didn't see Louise in this episode, like I mentioned, but it is a little weird that he would go on that trip with Jackie and not Louise, right? I mean, I guess it makes more comedy or whatever because we know that this family and stuff, better than we know Louise, but I don't know. It occurs to me now that it is a little odd that he didn't take Louise on the trip with him. But whatever. Katie Seagal, I guess, wasn't available this week or something. So it harkens back to a moment on the original show when they were, the one season when they were switching between Lacey Goranson and Sarah Chalk. And it was the episode where they were going to Disney, and Roseanne says to Lacey Goranson's version of Becky, or no, maybe it's Sarah Chalk's version of Becky, yeah, aren't you glad you're here this week, or something, and that was kind of funny. So it reminded me a little bit of that, I suppose, but, and then the stuff with, let's talk about Mark and Darlene, the stuff with that actually reminded me a lot of, Becky getting into, or I guess maybe she didn't even get into college at that point, but they were looking at their finances when Becky was probably a sophomore or a junior in high school and saying like, hey, we can only really afford to send you to community college and this and that. And so this was, I think, portrayed in a much different way. And look, I think that's why Becky put in that application for him, because she remembered maybe, 30 years ago when she was really unable to make her full potential because the family had such money problems. I totally get that. And I thought that was a really nice kind of callback to some of those moments in the original series, with their money issues versus going to college. And of course, college now is astronomically more expensive than in the 90s, certainly. So even worse now. But I can see why Becky wanted to do that for him. And I got the sense that they weren't going to tell him if he didn't get in, right? But Mark going through kind of the same feelings that Becky had, back in the 90s about not having the money to go to the school that she felt like she deserved or that she had the potential for. And I think we saw that here. I thought that was a nice kind of callback to the original series without duplicating that plot line, because in that case, they just sat Becky down and was like, hey, we got to look at community college. Other stuff's not going to happen here. He actually is already in college. He applied, she applied for him, whatever. But so it's a little bit different, but definitely harken back to that for me. And I absolutely love that scene at the end with Mark and Darlene, with her just, being the loving mother that I think she struggles with sometimes. It's clear to us, the audience, how much she loves her kids, specifically Mark. I think I don't know, or maybe she's just grown. Maybe Harris, because she was such a problem teenager, has made Darlene kind of rethink some of her mothering skills. I don't know, but I think she definitely has a soft spot for Mark, certainly. And I love that she was like, look, you got to do you, and I know you will go to your full potential, if you're able to, and this and that and the other thing. And yes, take a couple years off and start saving and whatever. I think that's awesome. And it's not easy. I mean, school's so expensive. I was lucky to go in the 90s to a state school, and my mother taught at a different state school. So we got, a tuition break there. I didn't go for free, but we certainly got a break. And so that was great. But yeah, anyway, it's very expensive. So, I think overall this was a pretty solid episode. I don't know what we're going to see in the season finale next week. It is, a money issue, one. It's called Less Money, More Problems. So obviously we're going to, still be talking about the money issues. That's obviously a perennial with this family and this show. As for MVP, I mean, this is another one where there's a lot of different choices here for MVP. I mean, certainly Dan, facing off against that guy on the plane, being the hero. I liked that. But honestly, I think I got to give it to Sarah Gilbert as Darlene. In that final scene with her and Mark, I loved how focused she was on his happiness, and making sure that he gets as far in life as he can go. I thought that was great. So I'm going to leave her with the MVP for this week. As for the episode on the whole, Flying, Applying, and Rassling Gators, I'm going to give this a B+. Which, upon reflection of last week's episode, that was probably a B+ as well. I think I was a little higher on it, because I had finally found out that we were getting a few more episodes for season 7, and I was like, yes, let's, rah, Connors. But I think this one and last one are probably both, sitting well in that B+ spot. But next week will be the finale, and then that will be it for the Connors, until probably January, certainly not in the fall. Unfortunately. But in the meantime, check out my other videos, my movie reviews, my TV reviews for other shows. And please, like I said, comment below and let me know your thoughts on this episode, if I can say it. Thanks for watching Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time. Bye.